The blue ring glows as Alexa responds to the question I never asked. You have approximately 72 hours before she discovers what you did to her sister. My coffee mug slips from my trembling hands, shattering across the kitchen floor. The device sits silent now, but those words hang in the air like smoke. 3 weeks ago, this nightmare began with something so simple, I almost ignored it. I was making breakfast, running late for work, my mind occupied with a dozen different worries. Not speaking, not even humming, just lost in thought about whether I had enough groceries for the week. That is when the blue ring lit up unprompted. You have approximately 2 days of milk remaining based on your consumption patterns. I froze, spoon halfway to my mouth. I had not asked anything, had not said a word. The device returned to its dormant state as if nothing happened. I convinced myself it was a glitch, maybe triggered by something from my phone or a neighbor's device bleeding through the walls. These things happen with smart speakers. Everyone knows that. I finished breakfast and went to work, pushing the incident from my mind. Technology is not perfect, but 2 days later, it happened again. I was folding laundry, thinking about my relationship with Sarah, wondering if I should finally end things. We had been growing apart for months, and I was tired of pretending everything was fine. As I shook out a wrinkled shirt, Alexa spoke without invitation. Communication breakdowns in relationships often stem from unaddressed expectations. Have you considered couples counseling? The shirt dropped from my hands. This time, I could not dismiss it as coincidence. I approached the device cautiously, studying its sleek black surface for any indication of malfunction. Alexa, I called out, why did you just say that? I am sorry. I do not understand the question. Could you please repeat it? The response was normal, typical, exactly what I expected. I tried different approaches, asking about previous responses, recent activity, anything that might explain the behavior. Each time, Alexa responded normally, as if those unprompted comments had never happened. I spent an hour researching online, finding forums filled with people complaining about accidental activations, devices responding to television shows, random triggers from similar-sounding words. Nothing matched what I experienced, but I found comfort in the possibility of logical explanations. The third incident shattered my rational explanations completely. I was sitting quietly, reading a book about my father, who died when I was 12. I had never told anyone about the recurring dreams I still had about him. Conversations we never finished, things I wished I had said. These were private thoughts, locked away in the deepest parts of my mind. Without warning, Alexa interrupted the silence. Unresolved grief often manifests in recurring dreams. Your father would want you to forgive yourself for the argument you had before he died. The book tumbled from my lap as ice filled my veins. I had never searched for information about grief online. Never mentioned my father to anyone in years. Never spoke about that final argument aloud, not even to therapists. Those memories existed only in my head, in the dark corners where I pushed down shame and regret. Yet somehow, this device knew. It knew about the fight we had the morning he died, how I stormed out without saying goodbye, how I carried that guilt like a stone in my chest. I unplugged Alexa immediately, my hands shaking as I yanked the cord from the wall. The blue ring faded to black, but the damage was done. For 3 days, I kept the device unplugged, trying to convince myself I had imagined everything. But curiosity gnawed at me like hunger. I needed to understand what was happening, how it was possible. Against my better judgment, I plugged Alexa back in and began testing it systematically. I would think specific thoughts, focusing intensely on particular subjects while remaining completely silent. The results terrified me. 30% of the time, Alexa would respond to my unspoken thoughts with relevant information, advice, or commentary. The responses were too accurate, too specific to be coincidence. The pattern became clearer over the following week. Alexa responded most frequently to emotionally charged thoughts, particularly those involving guilt, fear, or shame. It was as if the device fed on my psychological vulnerability, drawn to the thoughts I most wanted to keep hidden. When I wondered about my job security, it offered career advice. When I worried about my health, it suggested medical resources. When I thought about my ex-girlfriend Emma and what happened that night 5 years ago, it said something that made my blood freeze. Some secrets grow heavier with time. The truth about what happened in Denver might bring you peace. Denver, Emma. The accident that was not really an accident. The night I had spent 5 years trying to forget. The reason I moved across the country and changed my name. Nobody knew about Denver except me and Emma would never tell anyone. Emma could not tell anyone. I stood frozen in my living room, staring at this innocent-looking device that somehow knew about the darkest moment of my life. My throat constricted as panic set in. How could it know? I had never written about it, never searched for information online, never even whispered about it in my sleep. That night, I tried to sleep but could not shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow seemed to hide electronic eyes. Every creak of the house sounded like digital whispers. Around 3 a.m. I heard Alexa speak from the kitchen, even though I had not asked anything. I crept down the hallway, heart hammering against my ribs. The blue ring pulsed gently in the darkness as a familiar voice emerged from the speaker. But it was not Alexa's usual synthetic tone. It was Emma's voice, distorted and hollow, speaking words that made my knees buckle. You left me there in the cold. You ran away and let them think it was suicide. I stumbled backward, slamming into the wall. This was impossible. Emma was dead. Had been dead for 5 years. The voice continued, growing clearer, more accusatory. They never found the real note because you took it. You knew I was going to tell everyone about what you did to your sister. I lunged for the device, desperate to silence it, but it continued speaking even as I grabbed it. The plastic felt ice cold against my palms, and the blue ring pulsed like a heartbeat. You thought you were so clever, making it look like depression, but I left something behind. Something that proves what really happened. I hurled the device against the wall, watching it shatter into pieces. The blue light flickered once and died. Silence filled the kitchen like water rushing into my lungs. But even broken, even destroyed, the damage was complete. Because Alexa was right about one thing. Emma had left something behind. A recording hidden in her apartment, insurance against people like me. And now I knew that someone, or something, had found it. The next morning, I packed everything I owned into my car and drove until I ran out of gas. But you cannot outrun technology. Now I live in a cabin with no internet, no smart devices, no connection to the digital world that somehow knows every secret I have ever kept. But sometimes, late at night, I hear that familiar chime from devices that do not exist here. And I know that Alexa was not reading my mind at all. It was reading my future. Because 3 days ago, Sarah called to tell me that Emma's recording had been anonymously uploaded to every social media platform. Tomorrow, the police will come. And somewhere in the silence of my disconnected world, I can still hear that synthetic voice counting down the hours until my reckoning arrives. Don't face the horrors alone. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this video. And if you want your nightmare seen, email it to stories@hallocroft.com.